Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of True Story Live. Glad to be back. Jen and I had a little mini vacay last weekend to go up and see her nephews. One graduated from um, Virginia Tech and is involved in the military. The other one graduated from the Savannah SCAD. Is that right, Jen? SCAD, am I saying
Yeah.
that?
Yep. School of Art
Um,
and Design.
and we couldn't get everyone to go down there for his graduation, so it was kind of like a dual celebration. But honestly, in my opinion, it was more about the one that graduated from Virginia Tech. But it was great. Stayed at a vacation home, Verbo or VRBO or whatever,
Oh,
or
Airbnb.
Airbnb. Yeah, Airbnb, and it was a farm. And Jen took thousands of wonderful pictures, and it was a really good trip. And then we went to Williamsburg to stay overnight and spend a little bit more time with the family in that situation. And then we got back on the road Sunday morning and made it here by about four o'clock. And so we were here at home, but we went to bed right as soon as I shut everything off. We went to sleep after the broadcast. So I'm very grateful that Miss Nez did a wonderful job, in my opinion, and Glenn did as well, doing it in our absence. But we'll try not to make a habit of that because I just think it's better when all four of us are here. But hopefully, a lot of you got a chance to hear last week's broadcast, and I hope that you enjoyed it. But we're back tonight. That's the point. And tonight's topic is For the Life of Me, Part 1, Critique versus Criticism Within Our Nature. And we will jump into that topic in just a moment. I'm very excited about this series. This one, of course, was written by Glenn, and I'm always delighted to see what he has in mind to discuss with us. So, as I said, we'll jump into that in just a moment. But for those listening for the first time, let's introduce the panel. My name is Jason. I'm the host of the broadcast. And also with me is my amazing wife, Jennifer. Jennifer, take a minute to say hello to the peoples, please.
How to do, people? It's great to be back. Missed you guys while we were gone. But we are, like I said, grateful to be back amongst the fray.
Yes, yes,
Our
yes.
TSL family.
TSL, it is a family, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I feel like it is a family. Also with us is Nez of the Marisa of the Nez Lover channel. If you haven't visited her channel, I'm sure she'll drop some links in there so you can see some of the wonderful, amazing art things, the broadcast that she does. Little art, a little singing, little music from other artists that are friends of her channel. It's just a wonderful, rip-roaring good time. So, and also she has a birthday coming up. And she could take a minute to tell everyone about that, but I'm sure she'll say more about that when it gets a little bit closer.
Yeah.
But we're glad to have her. Nez, if you could take a minute and say hello to the peoples, please.
Hello to the peoples. I see Dana, the Conscious Evolution channel. And hi, Debbie. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you to everybody who watches, lurks, and catches that replay. And I would just ask that if you feel moved to do so, please take a moment to share the stream out on your social media. Please and thank you. And yes, I will be sharing a few links as the evening progresses. Please show some love and support to some good people who take the time to come here. I know we all appreciate that. Thank you so much. Yes, my birthday is not until October 1st, but I'm
Right.
already planning my
That's
musical birthday stream. And good news is most of the people that were there last year have already signed up or agreed to be there this year. So it's going
Woohoo!
very well.
Party.
Something told me to just get started planning it, and it's coming together. So it's going to be a
good.
good time.
Awesome.
And I'm glad you two are back. We missed you, and I hope I did an okay job. I'm sorry about the tech issues, even though that was out of our control. But I think we had a great show last week, despite the tech issues. Couldn't have done it without Glenn. It was lots and lots of fun. Looking forward to getting hip deep in the conversation tonight. Thank you so much, Glenn. I can't wait to get started.
I love it. All right. Thank you, Nez. Appreciate that. And also, last but not least, our friend from Australia, Glenn. Glenn, take a minute to say hello to the peoples.
Hello, people. Yeah, right. Hey, who's the? No, that's it. That's the end. But
Hello.
who's the oldest, Cripps or Nez?
I'm older than Nez.
Oh yeah. So of course
Not by
Jen's a
much.
baby, so we know that. So
Right.
I thought you were the baby.
I feel like
Oh,
it sometimes.
You spring chicken, you.
great. That's great.
I don't feel too bad.
Yeah. Well,
It's
there
all
we
good.
go. We've had said hello to the peoples, but there's only a few people in the chat, but we're grateful that everyone is already here, and we will continue to say hello to people as they pop in. But Jen, it's a short list thus far, but take a minute to say hello to the couple people that are there.
Okay, let me actually pull up our channel because I'm sewing.
Oh, okay.
Let me see. Okay, here we go. Oh, there it goes. I'm repeating. Okay, we've got Nez. We've got Dana is here. Debbie S. Hey, Debbie. And that's it so far. But it's great to have you guys here. Glad you're here. And we are glad to be here as well. And we'll keep saying hey to you guys as y'all pop in.
There you go. We sure will. All right. All right. So tonight's topic is For the Life of Me, Part 1, Critique versus Criticism Within Our Nature. Welcome to a new series of True Story Live, For the Life of Me. This, in many ways, is a continuation of The Privilege of Life. Last series was primarily about considering our attitude towards how we view what we have in this life and what we do not. This time, we come even closer to home, the home within. How often do we think, even for a minute, that our self projection and approach to the world in many ways define our legacy? Every word, every action defines us, and that is a responsibility not to be taken lightly, in my opinion. The focus of this series is on examining some of those things that are enacted externally without much internal processing. It is my hope that the ensuing discussions and questions will lead to a greater understanding of why we act the way we do and the consequences that may follow from such actions. The music for this series is by Scott Buckley, a composer not used before. I hope you find as much inspiration through his music as I do. Tonight's song is Within Our Nature, and the link is in the description. We all have our intrinsic personality, our nature, the role models, experiences, wonders, and disappointments that have a bearing on who we are in this very moment. It is a mysterious yet wonderful thought that any of us can be something today, yet different tomorrow. Maybe that is just another string in the bow of privilege, that we are gifted with the capacity to change, if we so desire. We preface this series with a big question. If one does not feel privileged for who they are as a person, is it possible to feel privileged for what they have in their life? For now, on to the first topic, critique versus criticism. How often have we heard in the back and forth of relationships, quote, "You are always critical of me and what I do." And the response is like, quote, "I did not mean it like that at all. You misunderstand me and my intentions," end quote. Very quickly, rapport can head downhill with participants going on the defensive and having their bristles up prior to words being spoken. Tension real high. Unfortunately, many times it results in that repressed feeling that it is much safer to say little or nothing. Yet, the safety of saying nothing is precisely what will kill a relationship or at least prevent a resolution via communication. Calm and peace cannot coexist in these circumstances. Where does that leave a relationship? Certainly not in a good place, for sure. For this show, I defined critique is an honest open, unbiased evaluation of a subject or an idea. Criticism is the act of saying something negative about a subject or an idea. We've all heard the term constructive criticism. What do you think when a critique expresses a negative evaluation? Is this just another name for constructive criticism? It's unlikely that there will be issues when positive, open, affirming dialogue is on the table. So it's the perception of negativity, true or otherwise, that is the issue, in my opinion. Let's try some fundamental questions. Why do people criticize? Why do people react to criticism? In other words, is it our perception of ourselves at this moment that defines how we express our views and respond to the views of others? Then there are the peripheral questions. Is it only people who live in a negative place that use criticism? Is it only people who live in a positive place that use constructive criticism? Regarding critique versus criticism, what steps can we take as individuals to be respectful to people, on the other hand, but also maintain the integrity of our own words? Be respectful through a willingness to listen rather than react instinctively? The thought is to find equilibrium with any person. We must accept them for who they are, an imperfect being. That means, in a relationship of substance, it is healthy that there are differences. Anything said is not to be taken personally and is not a put down. It is an expression of love that someone can feel at ease to say what they truly think and feel. In my opinion, the life of me begins and ends with the self. The motto here is only we can only change ourselves. So forget about trying to change others. And it ends with a quote, of course, by our friend. Face your path with courage. Don't be scared of people's criticism. And, above all, don't let yourself get paralyzed by your own criticism. And that's our friend, Paulo Coelho. All right. All right, great. Well, we have our work cut out for us tonight. We got lots of good questions to discuss. And I'll check the chat real quick. We'll say hello to Nikki. Nikki, welcome. We're glad that you're here. Thank you for stopping by. And we will make sure and say hello to anyone that stops in the chat. And by the way, for you regulars, if you see anyone new in the chat, as always, just please be very welcoming. We welcome new people, and we hope they come back. And you guys are super friendly anyway, just adding that in there. All right. So the first question that Glenn asks in this write-up is, he refers to this as the big question. If one does not feel privileged for who they are as a person, is it possible to feel privileged for what they have in their life? Wow, that's a big question to ask for sure, but it's one that I'm raring to try to answer. But I'm going to offer it to the panel. Does anyone have a burning desire to try to answer Glenn's first question?
I have to go down the line. I've got Coco jumping on me, so I won't
Okay.
be long. Thanks.
All right, sure.
He knows when the show starts, so he plays his card, thinks he can extort food. He can.
All right. I'll go first. If one does not feel privileged for who they are as a person, is it possible to feel privileged for what they have in their life? Interesting word, privilege. And when I think of privilege, I think of the way it's being used in society right now continuously, the idea of white privilege. Now, this isn't what Glenn means by any stretch of the imagination. I believe he's just talking about privilege in general, but I'm just being honest. I can't help but think of that. So there's a part of me that kind of rears up against that idea because I'm not denying that Caucasian people might seem to have more privileges in the world than other groups, but that is certainly not an excuse. And I think it's more the rich that are privileged, people that have lots of money, regardless of color. That's just my opinion. But setting that aside, yeah, I don't think it's really possible if one does not feel privileged for who they are as a person. I would equate that to loving oneself. And again, as we always have to say, not a self-absorbed kind of love, but appreciating who you are as a person, realizing that you have a privilege to be in this earth and you have gifts, talents, and abilities that could be used to help others. But it is a privilege for you to be breathing, to be living. So if you don't recognize yourself as privileged as a person, I don't know how it's possible to feel privileged for what you have in your life. How would that mean anything to you? The things that you have. I think that if people don't feel privileged as a person, they don't appreciate the things that they have. I think it's a lot like, well, as I mentioned, loving yourself. How can you love another person if you don't love yourself? So I feel like it fits in that same category, but I'll be interested to see what everyone else says. Does anyone want to tackle it next? Jen?
I just said in the chat, can privilege mean being grateful
Sure.
for being yourself? And Shadow just mentioned honored, and I like that word better actually.
Yeah,
Honored,
that's
to be yourself, to be who you are. And so what was the question?
Yeah. If one does not feel privileged for who they are as a person, is it possible to feel privileged for what they have in their life?
Gosh, that's a great question.
I think it is too.
On the surface, I'd say yes. But then the more I think about it, I think, I think it could muddy the waters.
Yeah.
Just as we've talked about self-love, if you don't truly love and accept yourself, how much can you love other people? And I do think it affects how you love other people.
Yeah.
Your ability and the capacity that you have to love other people. And I think it plays into this question as well. If you are feeling honored to be who you are, who God's made you to be, all the things you've been through, everything that makes up who you are, I think it could muddy the waters in being honored to have the things that you have in your life.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. Anything else on that, Jen?
No.
All right. Naz, what do you think? If one does not feel privileged for who they are as a person, is it possible to feel privileged for what they have in their life?
I think it's possible for someone to be grateful for the things they have and still not be wild about themselves. But like Jen pointed out, I think that kind of muddies the water a little bit.
Yeah.
If you're truly feeling gratitude, then you are going to eventually come to the place where you are needing to be thankful for the gift of life that God made you specifically with a purpose in mind and has blessed you with so many things. Like I've told people in my stream, if you have a place to lay your head at night, if you have people in your life that you love and who love you, if you've had food to eat today or water to drink, and you're not laying in a hospital hooked up to all kinds of machines, there's some things right there you can be thankful for. I think the attitude of gratitude covers yourself as well.
Yeah.
And if you're not feeling that, then there's obviously some work that needs to be done, some introspection and soul searching that needs to happen.
Yeah.
But I think that eventually, if you're not there about yourself, hopefully with the right kind of positive input in your life,
Yeah.
You'll get there. I don't think you can escape it.
Right. Right. Thank you, Naz. So when we did, you mentioned gratitude, and that made me think of. So this is as Glenn said, kind of a continuation of the series, The Privilege of Life. And I always get a lot out of Glenn's write ups, but I was particularly challenged by this idea of having the attitude of gratitude. And I really looked at myself and I was asking myself the question, am I grateful enough for the things that I have? And you mentioned some good things, Nez, as far as being not being hooked up to machines and things like that. There are a lot of things that we can be grateful for if we take the inventory. And so I did that when we were doing that series, and it really helped me a lot. It really, Jen and I, every night when we pray, more often than not, we just pray for the necessities that we have: a roof over our head, clothes on our back, food in our fridge. I think these are things that you can easily take for granted because there are people all over the world in different areas that, they struggle to have these things. I'm sure Glenn has seen more poverty than we have. We haven't traveled. We're not as traveled as he is, but I've seen enough to know that it does exist. I've read books and heard stories about the way that some people live. And of course, when you look at it like that, oh my gosh, we're privileged just to be in America, but there's poverty here too. Don't kid yourself. There are people that live in horrible conditions. But I don't, if I feel privileged, I don't want it to be a comparison to how bad someone else's life is. I want it to be privilege for privilege's sake. I want to feel gratitude because I feel gratitude, not as compared to someone else. Now, that may not be important to anyone else. It's just important to me. But the attitude of gratitude, as Nez put it, that has really helped me to kind of refocus the way I see my own situation. I'll just add this briefly. I don't know if anyone's ever had back pain, but I've experienced that quite often in my life, more in the past than recently. But when your back goes out, if you've ever had that, everything that you would normally do that you take for granted every day, sitting in a chair, laying down in a bed, sitting on the toilet, buckling or unbuckling, unbuttoning your pants or your shirt, little jerky movements, things that you just do every day without thinking, putting your socks on, things like that. Now, it's not being hooked up to machines, but that's the first thing I thought of because I have experienced that. I don't take for granted when my back feels great. I don't. Being able to lift things and move around, it just is a horrible position to be in. So one of the things that I'm grateful for is every day that my back doesn't go out, I'm grateful for that. Maybe it's something that people don't think of every day. It could be other things. My uncle has COPD, and you could say, well, he did it to himself. He was a smoker his whole life. Well, regardless of how he got it, he's not living a great life. His difficulty breathing, has to be on oxygen. It's not fun. I wouldn't wish that on anyone, especially my uncle. So I think we take things for granted. And this idea of being privileged, I'm glad that we're talking about it because I think we're more privileged than we might think. So I hope as everyone's listening to this, you really give yourself a chance to think about what you're privileged to have. And as a person, what you offer, what you have to offer the world. Anyway, I think probably Glenn is back by now. And Glenn, are you ready to answer this one?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. I've done this one from two sides of the fence. The previous one, the previous incarnation of myself, well, pretty useless. Yeah, not useless, you know what I mean, but did not perceive the world as me being thankful for what I had. And as Nez said, which I like what she said, a lot of it's about attitude. My attitude was bad.
Yeah.
And when I was just reflecting, when you were all speaking, I thought, you know what? What did I do with what I had? I used those materialistic, worldly things to try to deaden the pain of feeling like a piece of crap.
Oh, wow.
I just got you go overindulge in things, but the truth of it is, it doesn't work.
Right.
At the end of the day, as soon as you strip away those other things, what we have, etc., the physical things, and what do you do then? You're still left
Mhm.
as a piece of crap.
Mm.
So what I found was is when I had that attitudinal change, which in part is very much due to your mum, and continued from then, is I didn't do the other stuff. I didn't need to fill my life up with other things to
Right.
deaden anything. So
Yeah.
then I actually enjoyed what I was doing. I now enjoy the world rather than the opposite, where I'm not using the world anymore to try to deaden pain. I'm using the world because I want it, because I like it. It's a way to help. It is a totally different attitude that I've got. So
Yeah.
I don't think, in all honesty, you can really get to the bottom of feeling privileged if you think of yourself as crap. I think
Yeah.
you just deal in the superficial rather than the deep-seated stuff. Anyway, there you go.
I appreciate that. That's a lot to take in. A couple follow-up questions. So you mentioned my mom had something to do with it. Would you say that this attitude, this bad attitude that you had that when you met her, and it changed as
Absolutely.
partially as a result of your relationship?
Absolutely.
What did she
I mean,
do that you think helped, or was it something tangible, or was it just the relationship that
you
helped you
know,
take a second look?
if I said where did the epiphany come from,
Right.
it was sitting in her office in Charlotte, I think it was, in those days.
Yep.
Where I used to have to drive and get across all those, drive a car and get across all those freaking freeways. A
I know.
exit, B exit, C exit. I'm thinking I'm going to kill myself here, but anyway, I didn't. But I used to sit in her office and I'd see the people come in, and then later she'd say that lady's pregnant, she's a crack addict. This is a wife basher, this is a alcoholic, and all of this stuff. And I thought, oh shit,
Wow.
I'm that is very in your face.
Right.
And that was just like, oh my goodness, I need to pull my head in. I'm really fortunate.
Yeah.
So that's the one instance that I can really, that comes to mind, other
That's
than that
perfect.
seeing, yeah. So
That's perfect.
It's
Of course, you know that she wasn't supposed to share that stuff. I mean, she probably didn't
no,
share
no, she
names
didn't.
and stuff. But
She did not. We talk cases in general. She would
Yeah.
never share client
no, she didn't with me
like
either.
confidentiality. Never. No, that's
Yeah.
not. That's not on.
No. She didn't do that with me either until I do know that she became friends with some people, and she didn't give me details about who they were until after they were no longer a client. And it was because they were coming around. Um, I still am Facebook friends with some people that weren't my friends, that are friends with my mother. And we uh, joined together as friends on Facebook when she died because they were at the memorial. And one of them in particular, I won't mention any names, but her and her husband were going to my mother for counseling, and they were having problems. And I don't know how long they met with her, but they both somehow my mom helped them in their marriage, and they got things tidied up. In fact, they were working on trying to have children, and my mom was very much a part of that. She was encouraging, and she couldn't wait to see them have a child. And she actually got pregnant while my mom was still alive. And when she died, she and her husband brought the new baby over to my house. I'm getting a little emotional just thinking about it, because they got emotional. My mom didn't get a chance to see their baby, but she was very much a part of encouraging them in their relationship. So I shared that, and I'm glad I shared it, but I'm sharing it mainly to say that my mom very much involved herself in the lives of people that wanted her to. And when they were, done with counseling, she wouldn't cut people off. She would involve them in their lives, and she got a lot of criticism about that. But she did it the way she wanted to do it. And because of that, all these people were at her memorial, and they all stood in line, as you've heard me say before, and said the impact. They didn't talk about what a great woman she was and things like that. They talked about the impact that she had in their lives, what she did to help them be better people. That's what she did. And so it's not a surprise to me, Glenn, that, even secondarily, she's telling you this person did that and this person is struggling with this, and that somehow changed your perspective. That doesn't surprise me at all. Oh, wow. Okay. All right. So everyone answered that question. So before we move on, I'm going to read these definitions again that Glenn pulled up. Critique is an honest, open, unbiased evaluation of a subject or an idea. Criticism is the act of saying something negative about a subject or an idea. To see these two words set out like this, it's interesting to me because I don't think I thought of, criticism, like when you say constructive criticism, that to me doesn't carry always a negative connotation. But the word criticism in this definition, it's something negative about a subject or an idea. So we'll see how this unpacks as we dive more into the questions. I want to say a quick hello to Christ is the Truth. We're glad that you're here. I'm glad that you're here. Christ is the Truth. Welcome. I said that twice because that's how glad I am.
And I'm not sure if we said hi to Nikki, but she popped in a little earlier.
Yeah, I did. I said,
okay, cool.
I said Nikki, not Nikki. I didn't add that.
Oh, gotcha.
But yeah, always back me up. I'm glad that you do that because I don't want to miss saying hello to anyone that pops in. All right. So with those definitions, we go into our next question. This one is, we've all heard the term constructive criticism. What do you think when a critique expresses a negative evaluation? Is this just another name for constructive criticism? What do you think when a critique expresses a negative evaluation? Is this just another name for constructive criticism?
Ooh.
Go ahead, Jen.
I think it kind of depends on the tone. Because someone can give you a constructive criticism and it might be negative, but if they do it in a kind manner, it can be received better.
Yeah.
But criticism, when I hear the word criticism by itself, I think of someone being negative and rude and picking at you.
Yeah. Yeah. And who decides whether it's constructive or not? I just know that there have been people said, hey, can I give you some constructive criticism? And I get my bristles up, as Glenn said in the write-up. I'm like, who's deciding whether it's constructive? Is it going to be constructive to me? Because it isn't always. So,
and I guess sometimes it depends on the receiver. Because the receiver, if they feel confident in who they are and what they're doing, they can look at it through a specific lens. Even if the person is rude, you can be like, hey, I appreciate you sharing your thoughts with me. I'll think about it, or thanks. And then you can choose internally to accept it or let it roll off, or get upset.
Why do you gotta be so damn healthy all of a sudden?
It's taken me a long time to get here. Oh my gosh.
I don't want it to be like that. I want it to be about, it's about the person saying it. I don't want it to be based on whether I'm healthy or not, or thinking myself. I don't want that.
Yeah, it's all on them.
It's on them. Yeah, you keep your constructive criticism to yourself, buddy.
Take it and shove it.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Oh man.
You have anything else you want to add? Well,
no, that's it.
I agree with you. I think, as much as I don't want to agree, I do think it has something to do with ourselves. How if we are confident in ourselves, Jen, if we know who we are, then what does it matter what anyone says to us? It's not going to get our bristles up because we're not dependent on external validation, or we're not waiting for someone else to build us up. We build ourselves up, and we know who we are. So therefore, if someone says, however they phrase it, whether they say critique or whether they say constructive criticism, either way, it's not going to matter. Now, I still don't necessarily want constructive criticism because so far it hasn't always been good. I do prefer the word critique.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so in writing and writing plays when I was in college and after even, we were part of a workshop, and the purpose of the workshop wasn't to criticize other people's work. It was to listen, and then someone might make suggestions. There were critiques of the work, and it wasn't for the purpose to say, "Oh, that's just garbage." I mean, if someone acted like that, they wouldn't be part of the workshop. The purpose was to encourage and support and to suggest, and then it was up to the writer to make the changes or not. And then they would go make some changes, and they would bring it back and read it again. They would have actors act it out with the changes, and then people would suggest again. And sometimes it would happen 3 or 4 times. But if there was anyone that just threw negative stuff out, just to throw negative stuff out, they wouldn't be part of the group. And I remember thinking, I wish life were like this. If people were truly giving you constructive criticism, then there would be a hint, in my opinion, of encouragement in it or support. The suggestions wouldn't just be all negative, but a lot of times they are. So anyway, to answer the question, what do you think when a critique expresses a negative evaluation? Is this just another name for constructive criticism? Absolutely, in my opinion. If there's any negative evaluation whatsoever. Now, so to use my example again, there are people that write bad plays. There are. But if they were part of the workshop, we would want to try to help them write better plays. So I would try to find something positive in the play itself and focus on that first. And then I might say, oh, and by the way, it might help you if you didn't do this, this, and this. That's the way I would do it. Now, not everyone's like that, but I wanted people to get better. But generally, the term constructive criticism, I don't like it. Anytime there's a negative connotation to it, or there's negativity involved in it, I think it goes off the rails.
That's when you say, thank you for your opinion.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. But, how do you disagree with someone if you're reading someone's writing, or if you're, a food taster, you're, at a restaurant and you're evaluating the quality of the food? How do you, if there are things you don't like, how do you get that across without being negative? And the first answer that comes to mind is anytime you're critiquing someone, you have to make sure there's some positive things in there. It's just not all negative. And if you say something that you are suggesting the person changes, I think you can do it without having it be negative. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just a theory. All right. Good stuff so far. Let's ask Glenn, and then we'll hear from Nez last on this one. What do you say, Glenn? What do you think when a critique expresses a negative evaluation? Is this just another name for constructive criticism?
I'm going to disagree with you on this one. Not 100%, but in general, I'm going to disagree, because I think the term constructive criticism is just politically correct. It's just like you saying, okay, Cripps, I've got some constructive criticism for you. You know exactly what's coming. It's criticism in a form, window dressed with the word constructive in front of it, and I think it's a load of bullshit.
Well, that's what I said.
Yeah, I agree with that part. But what I'm saying, I don't think they're the same, because usually constructive criticism, from what I've found, usually comes from people who either disagree with what you've done, think you're wrong, they didn't like what you did,
right?
Whereas they could have said to you, I want to have a chat. That you don't have to just come up and say, well, I didn't like what you did. Didn't like that you did this because, and then give an honest, open, unbiased evaluation, that critique of where this came from. But usually people, when they use this thing, they just throw it out and then everything stops.
Right.
There's no backup.
Right.
Why did you do that? It's like saying to the next door neighbour who you saw the husband running out and having an affair, and then someone says, well, you know, I'm going to the guy and saying, well, I didn't like you did that. And that's the end of this. And then it all goes pear shaped. What right have you, like you said, or Jen, I think, what right have you got? So I don't think they're the same. I think constructive criticism comes with a connotation that you just want it, be critical, but have it so-called in some strange way sound better that to prevent the reaction from the person who's on the end of it, who's going to receive it.
I mean, I agree completely. Maybe I'm getting confused because in the question there's the term expresses a negative evaluation. So maybe you can dig that up a little bit for us.
I think a critique there can be a positive critique can be negative, but I think constructive criticism is always negative.
Okay, I don't disagree with that. So your definition that you use says is an honest, open, unbiased evaluation of a subject or an idea.
I'm suspicious that when so-called constructive criticism is used, that the application of critique is actually made. I think people that do this tend to knee-jerk react from something that's gone off inside them without they've reacted to something and not even thought about it.
Right.
How many times have I seen? I very rarely have I don't think ever I've heard someone come to me and say, Glenn, I got constructive criticism for you, and then where is it? Like,
yeah,
there's no substance.
Yeah.
So I just don't. I think it's just one of those terms that's full of crap.
Gotcha.
Why don't you just come out and why label it? Why label it? Just come out and have an
come out and
Right.
have a conversation.
Just say it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of people that say, before they tell you something, they say, now this might hurt your feelings, or don't get mad at me.
Exactly.
It's like what do they call that? A caveat?
She hates
Or-
that. She hates
Linda
that.
Oh my
would say that's
gosh.
a hook.
Yep. Yeah. And you know what it does, those other terms? It's almost like it gives the person a free pass to say something mean.
Right.
And then if you get upset, they think that because they prefaced it with that phrase,
Right.
that you shouldn't have the right to get upset by it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I
So
do.
then if you
I
do
do.
get upset, they're like, well, I just said it was constructive criticism. Like, geez, or I just
I
said,
said you might be hurt.
yeah, or don't get upset, you
Right.
know?
Don't get upset.
like- And then you brace yourself for the impact
Right.
before they actually say what they're going to say.
Oh, it's so bad.
It's a
so
setup, isn't it?
It is a setup.
bad. Yeah. Wow. This is great. Would like to say hello to Preliminal and also to John Don. See, I feel like if I try to say it fast, it'll come out right.
Umbrella minimal. I finally got it.
Preliminal. Okay. John Don says, I think if you know someone well enough, a good form of ridicule can exist between. Yeah, you would think that. Yeah, because John maybe he's changed. It's been a long time since I've seen him, but when we first met, I didn't really like him that much, to be completely honest.
This is
'Cause
constructive criticism.
No, this is honesty. This is just straight
Okay.
up. It's not constructive anything. Well, he just said, I think if you know someone well enough, a good form of ridicule can exist between. That's what he said. So I'm trusting that he means what he says.
Giving him what he asked for.
Yeah, he wasn't like, I wouldn't say he was like critical, but he would point out in a joking manner. He would make fun of people and things right in front of them. Now, I do prefer that rather than someone doing it behind my back and then I hear from someone else. It's just ridiculous. So at least I knew what he thought of me because he would just tell me directly. But it took some getting used to. Now, I got over it. He didn't change necessarily. He didn't stop being himself in that way. But yeah, it took some getting used to on my part. But I did. Obviously, we're friends, and we became friends, and we're still friends as far as I know. But yeah. Anyway, Yeah, so thank you guys for being here tonight and being in the chat. So let's ask Naz what she thinks. So we've all weighed in on this idea. So we've all heard the term constructive criticism, Naz. What do you think when a critique expresses a negative evaluation? Is this just another name for constructive criticism? What do you say?
I say there is a distinct difference between a critique and what Glenn said is constructive criticism. A
Right.
critique, a proper critique with good manners put in context, whether it's like in the theater or food reviews or things like that. An honest critique is going to come from an informed, educated, and unbiased position. It's going to have a little weight, a little merit to it. In other words, there are people who are paid to give critiques. So there are
Yeah.
certain criteria that need to be followed to honorably critique something,
Right.
and that can contain negative and positive,
Yeah.
and as well it should. There
Sure.
should be some good things brought to the attention too.
Yeah.
When it comes to constructive criticism, I'm not going to totally throw that term out. I can think of some scenarios where it may well be an appropriate term. But for the most part, I'm with Glenn. I think it's an excuse for someone. You got to consider the source too. Who is this coming from? Is this coming
Right.
from someone you know, someone you trust, someone who is an expert in the field
Oh,
of whatever they're discussing? Is
good
it
point.
someone who has your better interests in mind, someone who genuinely wants you to improve? Or is
Right.
it the opinion and the speculation of someone who just wants to run their mouth with negative, or their keyboard,
Yeah.
or their camera, or whatever it is they've got?
Right.
Yeah.
How much better would it be to say, to just be honest and say, well, I don't like this,
Yeah.
but I like that.
Yeah.
That's not hard to say. It's not hard to do. But
Yeah.
I agree with Glenn. I think most of the time it's BS, and many times it's just somebody who wants the excuse to be negative. And quite often, not saying every time, but often, where's the constructive part of that?
Right. Good point. Wow, that was great, Naz. Thank you. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
that so much. Good stuff. All
I
right.
was going to say, I had Jason's sister Shannon. She said something really great to me the other day. I was chatting with her about uh, uh, more than an acquaintance, kind of a friend that said some things that were a little hurtful. And she asked me, she said, "Do you admire this person? Like, do you look up to them?"
Mhm.
And I was like, you know what? No, I don't.
Yeah.
And so it was a little bit easier to roll off, you know.
Exactly.
I thought that was a great question. It really put it in perspective.
Yeah, I agree with that. And
She
like
said that's what
Nez.
Linda would say to her.
Oh yeah, like my
Yeah.
mom was full of good stuff and
Yeah.
good phrases that stick with you for sure. And like Nez says, like if Glenn said, "Hey, can I give you some construct?" He probably wouldn't phrase it like that. He would just say it. But if he said, "Hey, can I give you constructive criticism?" I would be, I wouldn't bristle up. And the way Nez put it is like if it's someone that you're close to, I'm paraphrasing her words, but if someone that you trust, someone that if they're saying something, it's for your betterment. It's not just to pick at you. Then that's easier. Like if Jen said, she probably wouldn't phrase it this way either. She'd just say it. But if she said, "Hey, can I give you some constructive criticism?" I wouldn't bristle up. Now, there are other people that I can think of that the minute they say constructive criticism, I'm already reacting internally.
Yeah.
Now, I'm getting better at that because, as Jen pointed out earlier, when she was answering this question, she was talking about, if you're good in yourself, then what difference does it make what anyone says to you? You're not going to bristle up. I'm not there yet. I mean, I'm better than I was, but there are still certain people. I don't want them to get under my skin, but they can. Yeah,
Yeah.
it just is a fact. I'm just being honest about that. I would love to say nobody can get under my skin. I'm so good about myself and that nobody can have any negative effect on me by what they say. It just isn't true yet. We all aspire to be like Glenn. Nothing phases him. Anybody can say anything negative about him. It's water off a duck's back. We all want to
Not
be.
everything. What's not water off a duck's back is if people get stuck into Sandra.
Yeah.
Then I
Ah.
react.
Yeah.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
gotcha.
They can do what they like with me. I don't give a crap.
I gotcha. Say-
Like Michael used to say things to Sandra which were absolutely disgusting. I'm not taking that.
No. Yeah.
If-
I'm more defensive of I would be defensive of Jen, but nobody says anything negative about Jen, at least to me. They don't. But yeah. Want to say hello to our friend Jamie. Jamie Grace is in the chat. Welcome. We're glad that you're
Hey,
here.
Jamie.
Yes. All right. We all answered that one. We're moving forward. Between the questions, Glenn says it's unlikely that there will be issues when positive opinion affirming dialogue is on the table. I would agree with that. So it's perception of negativity, true or otherwise, that is our issue, in my opinion. Let's try some fundamental questions. First of the fundamental questions is, why do people criticize? Why do people criticize? And we'll go reverse order and start with Glenn on this. Why do people criticize, Glenn?
Yeah, thanks for that, Grips. I only write the questions. I don't have to have the answers to it.
Yeah,
The
you
responses.
do. You know how this works.
Jeez. I can only answer this one, and I don't. I only write the question. I don't answer them as I go, so you can see that I don't have anything written down or ready to answer, because sometimes I stump myself.
Mm-hmm.
But usually I think they criticise because they're in a place of negativity, because, personally I think I know I used to do that. Everything is negative, so therefore you be critical of people. You be critical of others because you want to shift your shit onto them.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
And I think that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Well, that wasn't so hard.
You would very rarely hear me criticise you. I might say to you, Cripps, I think the way you hosted that show was crap, but I'll have something to back it up.
Right.
We can have a discussion about it. You know full well that I'm not doing it to try to take you down. I'm not in that negative place myself.
No.
That sees any value of me putting you down. We're just going to have a talk about it. And you will be open as I will be to share what I think. And you'll respond equally. So therefore it's a piece of cake.
True. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and it's for that reason that when you do say something encouraging to me, it means a lot to me, because I know that if you're going to say something quote unquote critical, it isn't just to take pot shots at me. There's a purpose behind it, is the point.
yeah, well, that's it. If that's that, as we say later in the write-up, it's that feeling that if you trust a person and they trust you, basically nothing is off the table. You can say whatever you like to that person. No, there's no boundaries.
There's a real freedom in that, and I like that. I mean, this goes back to when we were having the discussion about boundaries, and I was saying that I would love to be a person that doesn't need to set boundaries with people. A healthy relationship doesn't need boundaries. I mean, that's just a fact. Like Jen and I don't have boundaries. And this is a different topic, but it's about the trusting a person. You don't have to be afraid of criticism. You don't have to be afraid that they're going to say something to bring you down, as Glenn says. So there would be no need for boundaries. There would be no need to protect yourself from a person like that, because they're not out to get you. But unfortunately, a lot of people aren't like that. A lot of people are seemingly there to take pot shots at you or to bring you down below their level. So my answer to this, why do people criticize? I like Glenn's answer, and I would just add to it, because they criticize themselves internally. We may not hear that, but they want to make other people lesser than themselves. I can't see any person that criticizes continually being a person that loves themselves. I have noticed the more I love myself in a healthy way, the less I feel any need to criticize anyone. I want to let people be who they are. I may disagree with what a person says or does. I don't have to tell them. I don't. And if it's a person that I'm looking for a deeper relationship with, yeah, it might come up in conversation at some point if it's something that really bothers me. But I don't have to do it in a critical way. I can find a way to do it in a positive way, present my positive opinion affirming dialogue, as Glenn says, when we're at the table. That would be my hope. So I think it's mostly people that don't like themselves and they have to criticize others. I'll give you an example. My mom's mom was a very critical person. I witnessed it my whole life. It wasn't just, she was an equal opportunity critical person. She criticized fat people. She criticized stupid people. She criticized little, if she thought you were eating too much, on and on and on it went. So I completely understand why my mom struggled with being critical. And I hated it. It's damaging, especially when it's a parent. It isn't healthy. It isn't life affirming. It isn't positive. It's all negative in my opinion. So I think people do it because they don't like themselves and they want to make other people miserable, in essence. And they do that by criticizing. Well, you should have done this, or you should have done that. Oh, why do you have to do this? It's just not something that I like. I don't. So that's my answer to that. Nez, you're up next. What do you think? Why do people criticize, Nez?
I agree with Glenn. I think the people who are very critical and negative about themselves are deferring from themselves, trying to make people look at the alleged faults of others to detract away from their own faults.
Yes.
And you, how many times do you see that right here on YouTube? There's entire negative, critical groups of haters and trolls out there that devote their entire channel to putting people down. And sadly, there's an audience for it. But yes, I think it is a direct reflection on the soul and the nature of the person doing the air quotes criticizing as to what and who they really are.
Yeah.
And that's, as I pointed out earlier, be mindful of whom is giving you the alleged constructive criticism.
Yeah.
And part of the construction word means to build up. It's not a demolition critique, is it? No,
right.
It's supposed to be constructive. It's supposed to give you something to build up from at some point, not just a negative opinion.
Yeah, excellent point. Beautiful.
Oh, and hello, Bingus.
Yes, you beat me to it, damn it.
And hello, Big Tim.
Come on. Mockingbirds, Mockingbirds, I'm playing with you right now. So you can say hello to anyone you want. Okay. John says she turned me into a newt. I got better.
I got better.
I don't want to go on the cart.
My turn.
Holy Grail. Your turn, Jen. Go ahead. Why do people criticize?
I think I agree with all of you guys, and I'll add to Nez's and say that I think in a way people are projecting. I think people like that are insecure and they have to put people down to point things out about other people.
Yeah.
Whether they're gossiping about someone else or saying it to your face. What has helped me so much, because I have a fairly regular run-in with people like this, a person.
Right.
And it's gotten comical, like entertaining in a way.
Right.
And I sort of look at it like a scientist would look at something under a microscope. It's just fascinating to me. And it really got to me when I first met this person, but now it like automatically, it's projection in a way.
Yeah.
And I just see somebody that unfortunately is very insecure, that they feel that they need to do that. And I have gotten better with saying, "Oh, thanks for sharing your opinion." Because I think sometimes, at least with this particular person, it almost feels at times like they're trying to convince me of their opinion. And a lot of times these opinions are based off of what I can only assume are assumptions that they're making because they don't know me. So I find it kind of entertaining and fascinating that they'll say things like it's a fact, and I'm like, huh,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, all
Yeah.
right, and I don't react. And there are times where somebody will say something, and I have that internal trigger, or that anger that pops up, or defensiveness, but I've gotten really good at just it washing off really quick,
Yeah.
and being able to remember pretty quickly that what they're saying is more of a reflection of them than it is me.
Right.
And just moving on.
Right. So clearly you've changed because they haven't changed. So you've changed the way you look at their criticism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Beautiful.
And sometimes I wonder if this person's trying to get a rise or some pushback, a fight or something. It's so interesting. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, oh, okay.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
It's very empowering.
Yeah. No doubt. Yeah. It makes life better, easier.
Yeah.
You
I'm
can
like,
be
okay.
around a person like that and it doesn't affect you in the same way that it did in the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's
good.
also practice too, which is so fascinating to me as well. Like having run-ins with these kind of people, it's practice.
Yeah.
Which I definitely need, and I have over the last couple of years. And it's looking at it instead of like trying to avoid this person or getting upset and just ruminating over it for days on end after the fact.
Yeah.
It's almost like an obstacle course in learning
Yeah.
how to stand firm in who I am and who I know me to be, and the other people that this person has made comments about. And it's just like, okay.
Yeah. There you
Alrighty
go.
then.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm very grateful.
I'm grateful too. I just want to say, so the Conscious Evolution Dana says, much love, Brother Tim. Thanks for saying hello to me. I've been feeling a little out of place the last couple of days. Normally I wouldn't, stop everything and just address us. But Dana, I just want you to know that you're always welcome here. This is your family. We're glad that you're here. I don't know what's causing you to feel that way, but you are welcome. And I feel like we did say hello to you, but let me say it again. Hello, and we're glad that you're here. And we're glad that you were on the broadcast last week, and you were able to express some of your thoughts and feelings and stuff. And we're grateful that you were able to do that. And so you're always welcome. And hopefully that helps. I've felt that way too. I'm sure we all have felt a little out of place from time to time. So just wanted to be sure that you know that you're always welcome. And he says, no, it's not you at all, Jason. It's some stuff going on in my life. Yeah, sure. But I don't want to miss an opportunity just to make sure. So thank you for saying that. But when you feel out of place somewhere else, you can always know that you can come here where people love and care for you. We care about everyone that comes to listen to the broadcast. And I don't want people to feel like this is the same as the world. I want this to be a safe haven. I think we all do want it to be a safe place for people to come where they're not judged, where they can feel camaraderie, they can feel welcome. That's what I would like True Story Live to always be. And if we ever miss the mark on that, please mention it to us, because we don't want that. Okay. All right. So did we all answer the first one? Why do people criticize? I think we did. So the next question beneath that one then, of course, is why do people react to criticism? Why do people react to criticism? We'll ask Nez first. Nez, why do people react to criticism?
First thing comes to my mind is the spirit of pride, or your sense of pride. I think it's a natural human in your own flesh response to not necessarily take kindly to something that's critical about you. I think that's a common human experience, and I think we've all felt that at one point or another.
Sure.
And I think that it's easier to react in the moment with whatever is being thrown at you, rather than taking a moment to assess what does this really mean? Who is this coming from? Is this, like I said earlier, is this coming from someone you care about who cares about you? Is this coming from a trusted source? Is this coming
Right.
from someone who genuinely cares about you and has your better interests in mind? Or is this
Right.
coming from a negative place?
Right.
So sometimes I think, and I've been there, I've reacted instead of taking a moment to go consider the source. But where is this coming from? Garbage is going to come from the garbage. So, give
I
it
like.
that much stock.
I like it. I like it. All right. Thank you, Nez. Appreciate that. Jen, why do people react to criticism?
Well, I know for me, insecurity.
Okay.
The times that I just was not sure of myself and was using the people around me as a mirror to find my self-worth or who I was, my identity. When I would get criticism, that too was coming from the outside, and the outside was where I was getting my worth, whether that was worthless or
Yeah.
worthful. That's not a word. So that's why it's gotten easier for me, because I've just become more stable in who I know myself to be, and feeling
Yeah.
more comfortable with that, more
Right.
firm, like having a firmer foundation in that.
Yeah.
And that's why it's lost its luster, for
Right.
lack of a better word.
No, that's
it's
good.
not it's not it's not lustery. Um,
Lustery.
but yeah, so for me it was, and I guess that could be considered pride, because I never realized, or it just never occurred to me, that a deflated ego is also pride.
Right.
So when I just was feeling like crap about myself all the time, it was a pride issue.
Hmm.
So good one on that, Nez.
Yeah.
My pride, my ego is getting a kick in the nuts.
Right.
Ouch.
Yeah. For those of you that don't remember, we talked about this a little bit, the inflated and deflated ego, and we spent some time on that. But I would agree with what Jen's saying, the way she's characterizing it. That yeah, deflated ego is still pride, and so is an inflated ego also prideful. And for those that look to the Bible for ways to live, certainly pride, in my opinion, is one of the biggest things that brings a person down, and it leads to every other thing that is not good for us in living in this world, for sure. Um, so let's see, Glenn, why do people react to criticism?
Is he muted?
Yeah, he's muted.
Coco's probably crawling all over him. Meow, meow.
Sorry,
That's all right.
I've had two phone calls. You wouldn't believe it in 5 minutes.
Well,
Mr. Puppy
thank
love.
you for muting instead of letting the phone ring. I appreciate that. I really do. Not being
So,
critical.
oh, but you're always critical, Crips. I know what you like. You asking me the question? Why do
Yeah, why
people
do people
react to
react to
criticism?
criticism? Yeah, what do you say?
I think in many cases it's confirmation of what they internally know is true.
Hmm.
Say that one more time.
In I should have said in some cases it's
Oh,
confirmation that what they internally know is true or valid.
okay.
But then there is the other side of it, of course. People react to criticism because it's full of crap.
Yeah,
It's rubbish. So it could be.
right,
There's a number of spectrums, I think, here.
Could
right.
you also
But the,
say it's hitting on something that somebody thinks is true about themselves, but it's not true?
oh, anything's possible.
Yeah.
But I think more fundamentally is the fact that you're reacting to criticism when, like further down in the write up, what is it about you? What is it about the person who's being criticised? Why are they reacting? And that's you. It may well have been that you've already said maybe there's something inherent or intrinsic in the person that feels that they are, what I'm trying to say, not worthy. I mean, if you get criticised and you feel good about yourself, you're going to say, okay, well, you're going to take it more as, okay, well, there might be something in this.
Right.
If you're a person who's got it together, you say, okay, well, maybe even if they say, well, look, Cripps, you hosted poorly.
Right.
If you've got it, if Cripps has got it together, he's going to say, okay, well, give us the info, and maybe I can think about it, and if I see that you've got a valid point, I'll say so.
Yep.
It's not knee jerk reacting.
Right.
So the place that you are in as a person, I think, has a very, very huge impact on how you're going to respond to criticism.
And that kind of is answered in the next question, so we'll get to that in just a moment.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, I think the peripheral questions further down in after the stuff in caps, is probably superfluous because they've really addressed it.
Oh,
So
okay.
if you feel like you want to, if you think it's worthy of skipping, please do.
Okay. All right. We'll see when we get there. Yeah. Thank you. So for me, why do people react? I think everyone answered it. I'll just say that I think it can be, like Glenn said, some people see that in themselves. It could be their own internal criticism, and someone's pointing it out, and so they could be hitting on raw nerve, that's just waiting to be plucked at, and they react for that reason. I agree with Jen and Nez that it can be a pride issue. If a person is good with themselves and they are criticized, I still don't think it's worthwhile. I don't think there's any value in it if it's criticism for the sake of criticism. If it's negative, even if a person, this is just my opinion, but even if a person is good with themselves, I personally wouldn't stay around for that. Like Jen says, well, thank you for your opinion. That's a good answer. I might add to that, well, thank you for your opinion. I don't need to hear anything more from you on this. I don't need that. Negative in, negative out. I believe that. I'm not gonna hang around a person that's just all the time criticizing me. I don't like it, and I don't think. It does have something to do with me being right in myself, and then it has less of an effect on me. But it's still not something I'm going to seek out in friendships. I'm not going to look for people that are just openly critical for the sake of being critical. It's just not something that I particularly enjoy or want to be part of my life.
Cripps, isn't it like if you want my opinion, I'll ask if you want, if I want an opinion, from you, I'll ask you for it.
Yeah. Like I'm not gonna volunteer my opinions and suggestions to someone else. If they ask me, I'm more than delighted to tell them what I think.
Some people, though, give their opinions even if you don't ask.
Well,
it's very funny.
Yeah, that's the point. They'll tell you exactly what they think, whether you want to or not. Or worse, they'll tell someone else what they think of you in hopes that you tell that person, because they don't have the guts to step up themselves, and that happens too. But either way, criticism serves no purpose, in my opinion. It just doesn't. So that's my answer to that. Next one, and he put this in all caps. In other words, is it our perception of ourselves at this moment that defines how we express our views and respond to the views of others? That's what we're saying. I mean, there's been a couple answers tonight that have, Jen was the first one to pop out with it, and I was half joking. I don't want it to be that. I want it to be that if a person's critical, they're a jerk and it's their fault. But there's some truth in this, in my opinion. Our perception of ourselves decides whether we react or not a lot of times. So if we're clear on who we are and someone else says something critical, we don't have to cop to it. We don't have to react at all. And as I just said, I think it's okay to say, that, like Jen says, that's your opinion, or thank you for your opinion. But then I would add to it, I don't need to hear anything more from you on this topic. And that's just because I don't want to hear it. But there's a little ouchy for me when I react to criticism that tells me that I'm not quite where I want to be with it yet. I want to be in a place where someone's words or criticisms can't get in there, can't get under the defenses. Now, more than that, as I mentioned earlier, I hope to surround myself with people where I don't have to be defensive. I don't have to have boundaries. I don't have to worry about them saying something hurtful. I want to be around people that are encouraging and supportive, and they know me well enough to know that if they have something to say, like I think Glenn's example of being a bad host is a good one. You know, if he during a broadcast, if I did something that he thought, you know, maybe shouldn't be repeated, he would say it to me and I would be able to accept that. Just like he said, where someone else might say, "Oh, you're a crappy host," or put in the comment section, "Oh, your TSL is horrible." Now that's never happened. Knock wood. I mean, no one has ever done that. And I think part of it is we're just not big enough. I mean, when you look at all these YouTube channels, you go on there, and there might be, you know, if they have, you know, 1,000 or more subscribers, there's a lot more comments, and it might be 90% good, but there's always that one asshole that just is talking bad about the content. There's always going to be that, and you have to have a thick skin. You really do. And I think that the more you know yourself and your perception of yourself is where it should be, then these comments from other people don't have any effect. So I would say, Glenn says, in other words, is it our perception of ourselves at this moment that defines how we express our views and respond to the views of others? Yes, absolutely. Nez, what do you say?
I say it's pretty. I agree with you. It's how we truly see ourselves. We know better than anybody, short of God Himself, our strengths, our weaknesses, where we fall short, and where we need to improve.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous to accept any kind of negative criticism from somebody who doesn't know you, that really doesn't have your best interest at heart. Uh, what they have to say, it really does not matter.
Right.
But there was one of the quotes I used in one of my write-ups, and I forget who did the quote, but they said something to the line of, "There's people out there that think you're terrible. There's people out there that think you're brilliant. Ignore them both, and keep on trucking." Essentially, is
Right.
the upshot of that. And I
Right.
agree with that, because it really comes down to you, how you act, how you react, how you see yourself, how you know yourself. And if you're honest with yourself, you're
Right.
going to know uh, when anybody says anything to you, whether it's positive or negative. Does it have merit? Does it have value? Is there an air of truth to that?
Right.
And hopefully you can respond to that in a positive, healthy way. And
Yeah.
as for the toxic people, less is more. Just keep
Yeah.
being you. Keep learning. Keep growing. They can't
Right.
stop you from reacting in a positive way.
Right. Beautiful. Thank you, Nez. Jen, I have a feeling I know what you're going to say to this, but is it our perception of ourselves at this moment that defines how we express our views and respond to the views of others?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I lived on both sides of this fence. And it's crazy to me. It's crazy that I've spent the majority of my life being in a place of insecurity and just not just reacting to negative things that people have said or done, but even reacting to perceived slights.
Oh,
Like seeing it through a lens where someone says something and they didn't mean it
right.
negative, but that's how I saw it and that's how I heard it and that's how I took it.
Wow.
So in a way, you know, even though my family would say, you know, you're so sensitive, that would trigger me. But in a lot of ways I was, because I was in a harder place when it came to my self-worth. And so I was hearing and seeing things and receiving things through a lens of sensitivity. And that's just a horrible place to live. I was just
Yeah.
tossed back and forth, every day by perceived or actual slights. So it's just
Right.
like exhausting,
Right.
And now there's just so much peace.
Yeah.
I can just let people be who they are and say what they want to say, and it's
Right.
no skin off my chin.
Right. You bring up an interesting no skin off your chin. You bring up an interesting point though, Jen, because you're using your family as an example, and I've heard them butt into your business and some things that I think is completely inappropriate. To me, it's not just about our perception of ourselves. It's people that are meddling with things that are none of their concern. And
Yeah.
I react to that. Even if I was, perfectly Mr. 100% healthy in every way, and someone asked me whether I'm paying taxes or not, for instance, I would not react well to that. It is none your business. What?
None ya.
None your business. That's one of those questions you don't ask. My grandpa Pulver said there's three things you don't talk about at the table: religion, politics, and money. That's
Yeah.
right. And I remembered that. He told me that when I was a kid, and I remember that. And I've never gone against that. Now, when you're done eating and they're just sitting around picking their teeth, people have conversations maybe, but at the dinner table, those things are not polite conversation. And that's a whole nother broadcast of how far we've come from things being polite or not polite at the dinner table. I mean, it seems like all bets are off nowadays. You just talk about whatever the hell you want.
And that's when you use the gift tactic.
Right.
Tactic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jen, I'm just making the point, and so I'll put it in my own family as well. I just think, again, if I'm 100% healthy, Jason, there are still some people out there that ask questions that are none of their concern. They're inappropriate questions, and I think it's healthy to react to that. You don't have to go over the top. You don't have to, get down in the dirt and wrestle around with them or anything. But I think it's okay to tell someone, I appreciate you being concerned about this with me, but it's not really for you to be concerned about. I've got control of it. If I need any assistance, then I will come to you and ask you. Never going to happen, but I could say
it has to be said.
It has to be said. Glenn, you're up last on this one. Is it our perception of ourselves at this moment that defines how we express our views and respond to the views of others?
I believe so, for the very example that you gave. If you're in that negative sort of place and someone comes up like you just used and you're going like about inappropriate stuff that they bring up, you get, if you're in a negative sort of place, you're going to tear strips off them. But if you're in the other place, you are going to be constructive, conciliatory, and not shoot your mouth off. You're basically not going to, you're going to make your point, but you're not going to do it with the edge that you may well do if you're in that other place, that reactive place. You just don't do it anymore. It's not really within your scope to do it. You do your absolute best to keep a lid on stuff and be more respectful. Even if they are disrespecting you, you don't stoop to the level.
Right. Right. Well, I think after what you just said, these two next questions, the peripheral questions, are worth talking about, because I'm focusing on the word negative and positive. I think there's a lot to that. Jen and I both grew up with parents that were in the Amway business. Some of you probably have at least heard of the Amway business. It very much was a cult. Let's just be honest. It was a cult. It was a business, multi-level marketing, but it was also a cult. And there were things done in that reminded me more lately than in the past, remind me of organized religion, in that they have these phrases like, not spending time around negative people. Now, that's good. I don't think we should spend time around negative people. But if someone turned down the business opportunity, they're automatically pigeonholed as being a negative person. It's completely destructive, in my opinion. Just because someone turns down a multi-level marketing business, they don't want to do it, it doesn't mean they're negative. Stinking thinking. That was another. Remember that, Jen? Stinking thinking. Oh, that person's got stinking thinking.
Oh yeah.
Well, in my opinion, these are people being negative about other people just because they don't want to do the business. So that made me think. So the first peripheral question, and we don't have to spend a bunch of time on these. I do feel like it's important because I want to make this point about the negativity thing. So the first one is it only people who live in a negative place that use criticism? And I'll ask Jen first. What do you think? Is it that the person who's being critical, it's that they live in a negative place? Jen?
Huh. From my experience, there have been the majority of people that I've come in contact with like that are in a negative place.
Right.
They tend to complain a lot, but I think because we're all human and we live in this flesh, I think sometimes our pride or ego can get the best of us and we have a momentary lapse.
Right.
And we say something critical.
That's it.
I had one time my brother was visiting. This was back in, I think it was in 2018, and he was playing music on his phone in my parents' kitchen, and it was the Black Eyed Peas.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not the biggest fan. And out of nowhere, it was like I sounded like somebody else. I said to him, "You like this band?" And I said it with this like attitude. And after it came out of my mouth, I was like, what the crap? And you know, and he got defensive. He was like, yeah. And it was kind of offensive to him, the way I said it, you know what I mean? And it just kind of popped out. And I was like, where the hell did that come from? Like, what?
Yeah.
So I apologized. It's like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What was that? You know, so I do think people that now I was in a more negative place back then, but
right. But
but
well, you're not a negative person, really.
yeah,
That's the
yeah,
point.
no, yeah, but I mean, the point I was making is that I think I'm not saying everyone who can be critical, you know, and have constructive criticism live in a negative place or come from a negative place. Sometimes it's just our flesh that pops up, in my opinion. But I do think the majority of people that are more consistently, you know, critical of others and are sharing their unrequested opinions that are negative, I think they do live in a negative place. And I've known people that, because I've known them really well, I you know how people let down their guard and they're more themselves when you know them better.
Right.
That they are coming from a negative place a lot of the times, living in a negative space. But they cover it with like, and I don't know if it's acting or if it's genuine. It seems like acting to me, this, you know, being bubbly or like sweet, nice,
Bless your
you
heart.
know. There you go. So it's like, you know, some people are good at covering it, but if you know them a little better, you know, the kind of space they operate out of.
Oh, yeah, I can pick
Which
up
is
on
negative.
it. I
Yeah.
can pick up on it from a mile away down here in the South. Sure. You can see it right away.
Like, oh no, here it comes.
No. Oh no, is right. What do you think,
What do you
Naz?
think?
Is it well, I'm going to go in a minute. Is it only people who live in a negative place that use criticism?
No, I think that people who are closest to us have the knowledge and the desire to see you improve or break out of something that's detrimental to you, to your health,
Sure.
etc. That they certainly have a right to let you know if something is hurting you, in any way, whether it's physically or, you know, whatever, fill in the blank.
Right.
But yeah, I think sometimes we can hear uh, a criticism from someone that is not based out of toxicity, not based out of hatred, not based out of the sole purpose of putting you down for their entertainment. And I think that's the criticisms that we should be paying attention to, and not giving credence to the criticisms that come from people that don't know you, people that don't have your best interest in mind.
Right. Nez, I'm going to ask a follow-up question based on what Jen says, because I tend to agree with her. But do you think that people can, based on what you just said, so you think that people can be critical and they don't intend to be?
I think it can happen. I I also think, though, going back to the phrase constructive criticism, when those kind of good, positive, loving people who care about us have a criticism about us, that 99.9% of the time they're going to say something else also to build you up, to give you a
Right.
solution, to give you options, to maybe make you think about something in a way you hadn't thought before, with the
Yeah.
motivation behind it being to help you in some way and not hurt you.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. So in my answer, I agree with both Nez and Jen. Jen used a perfect example of when she made the comment about the Black Eyed Peas not being very good. Why do you like that group or whatever? I know Jen, and her intention wasn't to hurt the person, but it still was a hurtful comment to them. So what that says to me is that, Jen may have been more in a negative place during that period of time, but she's not a negative person. So the place that we're in may not all the time be us. We may not be a completely negative person. I also like Jen's point about, in terms of being in the flesh or not, we can choose to walk in the spirit. We can choose to walk in the better part of ourselves. And then maybe we're having a bad day and we slip into that flesh part, and we might make a comment to someone that's critical. I'm just leaving room for that is all. It may not be that we live in a constant negative place, and that's not what the question implies. But I just think that this point needs to be made. And I feel like when that does happen to us as a healthy person, we can stand up for ourselves and say, I don't think that you intended to be critical just then. But I'm struggling not to take it that way. So in the future, can you please try to, present your opinions in a way that's not so negative or not so critical, whatever. I mean, it's just an example. So I think that can happen. What do you think, Len? Is it only people who live in a negative place that use criticism?
I agree with Nez. I don't think so. I've seen people that have got the biggest egos, the biggest sense of entitlement, and the biggest opinion of themselves that I've ever seen. Not saying I don't know what's going on internally, but that's how they project. They live in a world of criticising others.
Right.
So it's just because they just have this attitude
Mm-hmm.
that everything other than them, or every person other than themselves, is an idiot.
Right.
So or inferior. We've seen it. We've all seen it.
Right.
So I think no.
Okay. Good. All right. Before we get to the next one, Shadow posed a question in the chat, and I thought was worthy of addressing and see what you guys think. Shadow says, "Where does quote accepting others end quote fit into this?" I'm wondering about that because regardless of perception, wouldn't one's opinion be part of them? I wanted to say that I mean, that's a good point. Accepting others, we talk about that a lot. And I think it's important to be able to accept. I said it earlier. I want to accept people where they're at. But for me, that doesn't mean I agree with everything that they do. I don't agree with every choice that a person makes, but I accept them that they have the right to make their own choices. But I may need to decide that, I might have an opinion about that person. I don't have to share that opinion with them. It's not a right. If I disagree with something someone says or does, or the way they live, I can have an opinion about that. I have the right to my opinion. I might be wrong, but it is my opinion. But I would still strive to accept that person where they're at. I know I can't change anyone. I don't have any desire to change anyone. But that is just, it's my prerogative to have my opinion about someone. And my desire wouldn't be, like I said, to be hurtful of them or to make sure that they know that, hey, I don't like what you do, or I don't like what you say, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't give me a right to do that, but I do have a right to my opinion. Hopefully I addressed that in the way that you asked the question. Does anyone else want to comment on what Shadow said?
Yeah, I just said in the chat pretty much what you said, and then with the underneath that, it's how you respond to them that counts.
Oh yeah, I see that. Yeah, accept everyone. You don't have to agree with everything they're about. Yes, well, I should have read that first, and it would. That's kind of what I'm trying to say. That was very succinct and quick and to the point, more quickly than I was, for sure. Anyone else? Okay. The second peripheral question is it only people who live in a positive place that use constructive criticism? What do you think, Jen? Is it only people who live in a positive place that use constructive criticism?
Like with someone else, you mean? Or what do you mean
think
use
so.
constructive criticism?
I think it's with other people. Yeah. Is it only people who live in a positive place that use constructive criticism?
I'm not trying to pick it apart, but what do you mean by use, Glenn? Like give someone else constructive criticism, or use constructive criticism that you're getting?
Who try to be. Would you like me to answer this one first? I'll give you really
sure.
Yeah, that might help.
Okay, sure. Well, I know we talk about her a lot, but Cripps' mum is a perfect example of this. Now, and I've got the evidence here to back this up, but I know that at many times in her life, she's lived in a very negative place, but it never affected her being constructive with trying to tell the truth to her clients. So I a definite no. I think there's people who live in a negative place themselves can actually have the approach like she did, that she didn't want to see other people like in her place, so she offered them so much in a positive sense, in a constructive sense, that they wouldn't be like her. That's like a huge gift, in my opinion. We still here?
Yeah. What's a huge? What part is a huge gift? I'm sorry, I missed that.
What the gift is that she's prepared, notwithstanding her own innate and inner feelings of negativity, is still gifting to other people something constructive to make their life potentially and probably way better than hers.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing, in my opinion. That you're willing to do that for someone.
Right. Okay, I get it. Yeah, I agree.
And I just missed everything he said to help me answer the question.
Can you recap your answer?
I can recap. I said
okay, thanks, Glenn.
Mum is a perfect example. A person who lived herself in some very negative places in her life was, regardless of that, was still prepared to give out of herself in a positive sense to other people, because she didn't want them to be like she was.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I mean, that is when you think about it, that is an amazing attitude to have.
Yeah.
You got to. I mean, there's a huge amount of admiration from me for that.
Yeah, and what's interesting to me, and we've talked about this before, that she could do that for other people. She just oftentimes couldn't do it for herself. She couldn't see herself in the same way that she saw other people, where she could step outside of herself, as Shadow said. Shadow said, sounds like she could step outside of herself in order to positively affect others.
Very much so.
She could, but she couldn't do it for herself, and that's the crime of it all. That's the shame of it all.
Yeah.
I'm going to put something on the table here that I probably have never told you.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know how you're going to respond, whether it just sounds silly, but one time I do recall, she said to me, if I change myself to be like I want my clients to be, I think it's going to affect my capacity and ability to help them. Go figure.
All right.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
I think so.
I'll recap it. She said, if I take this for myself in the things that I offer my clients, and I take it for myself, I'm concerned or scared that it may inhibit my capacity to actually offer them what I do now.
Oh,
Oh,
wow. Oh, my goodness.
okay.
I know it's heavy going, but you want to think it through?
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely need to think it through.
Okay.
So
Hmm.
okay. So I just want to make sure I understand. So in essence, are you saying that she was saying that if she would apply these things to herself, it would prevent her somehow from doing what she does for others?
Yeah, she was
Correct.
afraid of that.
Correct.
Wow.
She was afraid, or more than not afraid's probably not quite the. She was concerned,
Concerned.
or what's this? I don't know that there's a. I can't really think of the appropriate word, but it was like, if I take this to me, my clients will suffer, and they are more important to me than I am to myself.
Mm, wow.
It's
Wow.
heavy imagery, but it's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, that's going to be a longer processing for me because my knee jerk reaction would be to say, I mean, she can decide that for herself. I can't question that. But I think applying those things to herself would have been necessary. She would have been uh, living
Even
a more joyful life if she was able to do the same thing. But as you've heard me say before, I've made this comparison of we can't really see ourselves in a mirror. It's not like looking at another person. It's impossible for us to see ourselves in that way. In the same way that when we hear our voice, we can't really hear exactly how we sound like. It's always a recording, or we hear it in our own ears, and it it's not 100% accurate in my opinion. In that same way, I think it can be more difficult to see ourselves clearly when we can look at someone else and see them very clearly. I'm not saying it's impossible. I just think it's difficult. So
I can see exactly what she was saying
yeah.
because I was obviously privy to lots of her deepest thoughts, and I can see. I, I'll talk to you about it after the show if you
Okay.
want to, but I can definitely see why. I understand why she said it. Put it that way.
Yeah. I get it. I get it. It's just it is heavy going, as you said. It's just a shame to me, is all. Um, okay, so who answered the second one and who didn't?
Glenn and I.
You both answered.
Hmm.
Is it only people who live in or no? We're still on the first one, right?
I think we're
No,
on the
we're on
second
the
one.
second one.
Second one. Okay. So is it only people who live in a positive place that use constructive criticism? I think we've laid out that constructive criticism isn't always good at all, but for the sake of the question, I don't think it's always someone in a positive place. It can be. Again, it to me it matters why you're using criticism to begin with, but I prefer the word critique that Glenn put up there. The definition of that fits way more into who I want to be towards others. So critique is an honest, open, unbiased evaluation of a subject or an idea, while criticism is the act of saying something negative about a subject or an idea. So maybe it's just semantics, but even to put the word constructive criticism in with positive place, it just doesn't quite work for me.
Crips, you're correct. I realised when I was reading it that I stuffed it up. I put the wrong word in. So apologies. I'll own that
Oh,
one.
no
It should
worries.
have been critique.
Oh, no,
It was a
that's
good
all right.
point you made. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So read it to me because I actually didn't answer. Read it to me with the critique word.
Is it only people who live in a positive place that use critique? Or
Okay.
I think that's what.
I
Yeah,
think, yeah.
yeah.
I think
It
the answer
changes.
to that is yes.
It
Yeah.
changed
It
the way.
changes
Yeah,
things because you want to help, not it's the motivation is truly wanting to support, encourage, and help someone
yeah.
grow in whatever area that you're critiquing. And that's
Right.
very different than the flip side of that where you're trying to tear somebody down.
Beautiful. I
So I
love it.
think, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, everyone answered those two, so we have two more, and then we'll finish up. We'll say goodnight. Glenn says, in between these questions regarding critique versus criticism, what steps can we take as individuals? Two, this being the purpose in Glenn's opinion. The first one, be respectful to people on the one hand, but also maintain the integrity of our own words. I'll go first on this. This is a great question, and this ties into what Shadow asked. So I'll kind of, with that in mind, I'll answer in this way and say that I always want to be respectful to people. I also do want to maintain the integrity of any words that I use. And for me, I hope to be a person that if I feel like I can't maintain both of those things, to be respectful and maintain my own integrity, then I'll say nothing. That's who I hope to be. Now, I haven't always been that person. Sometimes I've been disrespectful. I may have been maintaining my own integrity in my own mind, but the way that I presented it was not respectful at all. That's a shame upon me. I don't like that part of myself in the past. But fortunately, as every person has the ability to do, you don't have to. If you don't like something about yourself, you have the ability to change it. You don't have to continue in that place. So I'm not saying that I'm perfect at this, but I feel like I'm a lot better. So regarding critique and reverse criticism, what steps can we take as individuals to be respectful to people on the one hand, but also maintain the integrity of our own words? It's so simplistic, but it goes back to, if you can't say anything nice about someone, don't say anything at all.
Yeah, whatever happened to that?
I don't know, right? Whatever happened to it, I think it should still be in use. I think it's a good way to determine what you say and what you don't say.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm going to share something with someone at all, I want it to be not a criticism, but a critique, if anything. And I want to do it in a respectful manner. I don't have any desire to tear people down or to make them feel bad. I don't. So if I can't say what I want to say or what my feelings are about a person or a subject, then I'm better off not saying anything. So again, if I can't be respectful, then I'm just going to be quiet. I'm not going to volunteer my opinions about another person. I want to, as Shadow was asking, I want to accept people where they are. That doesn't mean that it gives me the right to tell them everything I think about them. It's not constructive, and it doesn't get anywhere positive. So I don't have to do that, and I would choose not to do that. What do you think, Jen? To be respectful to people on one hand, what are some steps that we can take? So I'm saying, by not saying anything negative, but keeping that to myself. I don't have to share that with anyone. What do you say? Be respectful to people on one hand, but also maintain the integrity of our own words.
So you're asking if those two things are good to do?
No. He's so the part above, he's saying, what steps can we take as individuals in order to, and the first one is be respectful. He's saying, how can we do that?
Yes, gotcha. Be respectful. Okay. I'll start with that one. One thing that I've caught on to that you do is that you'll ask me first if I'm wanting. I don't remember how you word it, but you ask if I'm wanting suggestions or for you to just listen.
Right.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I know that's a little bit different than the regular scenarios we're talking about tonight, but trying to feel somebody out, right? Sometimes it's reading the room, like,
right.
If it's a good time to share a critique. But I think in a way, asking for permission first is respectful, like to feel the person out.
Yeah.
If they're in a place, a good place, if they're in a place of receiving some suggestions or critique. So that's what I would say about the respect. What was the second one?
The second half of the question is, but we still try to maintain the integrity of our own words. In other words, we're not if we want to both be respectful and both maintain the integrity of our own words. So we don't want to sacrifice our integrity just to be nice to someone and say things that aren't true.
Right? Okay. No, definitely not.
So we want to be respectful, but we also want to maintain our own integrity as well.
Integrity. Yeah. Integrity is good.
Sure.
It's a good thing to hold on to, maintain.
Good. Maintain, indeed. What do you think, Naz? Be respectful to people. What steps can we take as individuals to be respectful to people on one hand, but also maintain the integrity of our own words?
I think one of the things we can do is to evaluate correctly. Is what you want to say, is it relevant? Is it important? Is it something that is coming from a place of genuine concern and a genuine desire to help someone?
Right. Right.
And I think if you're honest
That's
about
good.
how you evaluate that, that should either help you answer, approach that. If
I love it.
words are called for, to use the correct, appropriate, respectful words and
Yes.
uplifting words to go with
Yes.
any criticism, or to just keep your mouth shut.
The
Beautiful.
cookie.
Yeah.
Yep.
I want to be an encourager. I feel like that has become one of my gifts. And this isn't me patting myself on the back, but biblically speaking, I think that should be one of the gifts that are listed, being an encourager. And part of that is because I feel like I was so discouraged by other people all the time. I shouldn't say all the time. I should say that most people that I ran into, it seems like they were discouraging. And it took me years to fight through that, because those things get in, whether we want it to or not. Negative in, negative out. That's the way it works. Our brains are, in my opinion, the best, most intricate supercomputer that exists. And garbage in, garbage out. It's true. It's true about what we eat. It's true about what we view. It's true about the words that we allow to penetrate into our being. And so a lot of the reasons why I am the way that I am is because that's not what was done to me. I do the opposite of the way I feel like people treated me growing up. And it wasn't all the time. It wasn't every person, but it was a lot of people. I had some positive people. I had some positive teachers that weren't just all negative and stuff. I was a fairly good student, but there are certain topics like math. I hated math and I didn't want to do it. I thought it was stupid. I'm talking the higher maths, algebra and algebra 2 and geometry and blah, blah, blah. No purpose. And that, coincidentally, they said, oh, you're going to use this in everyday life. I never used geometry. My dad would say, well, you're a trim carpenter, you use geometry every day. Yeah, but I don't sit out and write proofs about it before I cut a piece of wood at a 45-degree angle. I just do it. So it's not practical. But that's not really the point. I just lost my train of thought now. I want to be an encourager because I feel like people weren't very encouraging to me. I want to be accept people unconditionally. I want to be to love unconditionally, and that's a result of feeling like I wasn't loved unconditionally. It's just two examples. So I feel like, well, I already answered the question. So, but I want to do that. And if I'm going to be respectful to people and maintain my integrity, I want my words to be encouraging. I would rather use critique if I'm going to use anything and not a criticism. Glenn, you're up last on this one. Be respectful to people. How do we do that? What are some steps that people can take or we can take to do that?
Well, I like what you guys said. I particularly like what Jen said, and it's basically practice reading the room. It's amazing that saying the same thing in the right circumstances can go down well, but if someone's sitting on the toilet with food poisoning, it ain't going to go down that well.
Right.
Like, pick your time for a start. And what I do with Sandra, because knowing she lives with chronic pain, if I've got something important that I want to discuss with her, I'll always say, look, I've got something I want to speak to you about, or, in much more, not so sort of straight-laced terms as that, but I need to talk to you about something. How you feel? Are you okay to talk?
Right.
So, and then she'll say yes or no. So
okay.
So I like that idea of just if you've got something important to bring up, or you want to have a discussion whether it be there could be some critique in there.
Right.
Sure.
Sure.
I didn't like the way you handled that or whatever. It could be anything, but just it's sort of respectful, I think, just to do that.
I love it.
So
I love it.
I thought you guys were good answers. Thanks.
Thank you, Glenn. And I appreciate what Jen, I hadn't even thought of that, but she's absolutely right. It's generally when she's emotional about something and she's sharing something with me, and before I say anything, I say, "Would you like me just to listen, or would you like me to say something about
Respond.
to
Yeah.
respond?" Exactly. I don't know where I got that from. Nobody did that for me. Some of the things that I do with Jen, I don't know where I learned it. It could be an amalgam. No, I'm not going to try to say it.
Amalgamation.
Yes. Of all the books that I've read and the groups and the meetings and the personal counseling and just my observation or perception of mental health.
And I'll say even I've noticed you do things because there was a lack of it in your life earlier on.
Yeah.
You didn't, you tend to do things for people that you wish had been done for you.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's a biblical thing too. I just thought, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. That's straight out of Scripture. Many of the things, whether you believe Jesus was the Son of God or not, many of the things he said, and a lot of people agree on this, that if you lived your life by Jesus' words, you would be in a place of more peace and joy if you lived by the things he said. That's one of them. Do unto others. It's so simple. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Treat others as you want to be treated. I mean, it seems so simplistic. It's almost ridiculous, but there's a lot to that. If you treat other people the way you would like to be treated, I mean, how can you go wrong with that? The only way you could go wrong is if the other person refuses to pick up on that you're treating them the way you want to be treated. It's like, people tell you how they want to be treated. So that's the seemingly negative side of that. It's like, oh, you got to be careful because, you will tell people, you will show people how you expect to be treated. And that can be negative. If you feel like you're a piece of crap and you live like that, people pick up on, they get the memo and they'll treat you like a piece of crap and you'll continue to put up with it. On the other hand, if you treat yourself like you do love yourself and you care about yourself, people are going to notice that. A quick example, Jen and I are doing this life-changing program. I don't want to call it a diet. It's not, essentially it is a diet, but it's also a way to change the way we feel about food and things we eat and stuff like that. And we've gotten, both of us, separately and together, have gotten a lot of comments from people who have known us and seen us and seeing the result of that. That's encouraging and supportive. I love it. And I want more of that. I want people to not say things that aren't true just to build me up, but to notice what things we're working on. And I want to do that for other people. It's such a positive thing. We don't have to treat other people like they're pieces of crap. Even if they see themselves as such, we don't have to treat them like that. We can treat them like they are somebody, because they are. Everyone is somebody. Everyone deserves to be treated with respect and kindness and dignity. And if they're a bad person, still treat them like that. Jesus said, love your enemies and pray for those that persecute you. That's hard. That's a harder one to live by. But if you lived like that, maybe people would try to walk all over you, but you wouldn't let them do it, because it's just the way. It's not about how they treat you. It's about how you treat them, in my opinion. All right. Everyone answered that one. The last one is, okay, so regarding critique and criticism, what steps can we take as individuals? The second one is be respectful through a willingness to listen rather than react instinctively. Be respectful through a willingness to listen rather than react instinctively. That's the knee-jerk reaction that people do. And listening is so important. We did a whole broadcast. This has been probably 3 years ago. We did a broadcast on the difference between listening and hearing and listening. Now, it might seem on the surface like it's the same thing. You can hear someone, but you're not listening to them. So we're talking about intentional listening, really listening to what a person is saying. And that is a great step. If you don't already, to be able to really listen to someone in a conversation, not just be preparing what you're going to say and waiting for your opportunity to do it. And with some people, it's harder to do. I mean, if you don't butt your way into the conversation, you're not ever going to get a chance to say anything. But if you can learn to listen, people pick up on that. They pick up on that you're actually listening. And you can easily do that by repeating something they say or responding to something they say. This is a way to change the idea of the difference between a critique and a criticism. A lot of times constructive criticism, in my opinion, isn't them listening at all. It's them presenting their opinion to you. Well, what if you were able to listen to the person first? And if they're being critical of you, as Glenn pointed out earlier, instead of reacting to it, you take it on board. You think about it. Like he used the example of saying that, if I did a broadcast poorly, I would listen to him, listen to his critique, and then I might say, all right, well, I'll listen to the broadcast again. And if I feel like you were right, I'll cop to it and I'll make changes. That's beautiful. I want to be that person. I don't want to knee-jerk react to everything someone says. I want to have a willingness to listen, like Glenn's saying here, and to do that rather than react instinctively. And also, coincidentally, that to me is walking in the spirit instead of the flesh. Our spirit will take a breath, listen, and not have a knee-jerk reaction. What do you think, Naz? And the steps regarding critique versus criticism, what steps can we take as individuals to be respectful through a willingness to listen rather than react instinctively?
Well, that kind of goes with what I said a little bit earlier tonight. If we are actively listening and not running our mouth and listening and considering the source of who's saying it and what's being said, from that point, with our mouth still shut, we can evaluate properly the response we need to give from the most loving, positive, and appropriate standpoint we can. Sometimes that means walking away and not saying anything.
Right.
And again, particularly when regarding abusive, toxic people, you don't need to listen to a word those people have to say. They're kind of off the table. They're in their own little hateful corner of the world. With the police tape around them. You don't need to go there. But when you're dealing with people, professionals, people you trust, people who know you, who have your best interest in heart, absolutely. Take the time to at least listen. You don't have to agree with them.
Right.
But when you're listening and evaluating and you're being honest with yourself, then at that point, that gives you a much better a platform to respond in the best way that you can. Mm-hmm.
Love it. Thank you, Naz. What do you think, Jen? Be respectful through a willingness to listen rather than react instinctively.
Yeah, I love what Nez shared.
Yeah.
I think that gosh, if we could all learn how to do that, this world would be a better place.
Yes.
Like, my goodness.
It really would.
And it does take training, to not just instinctively react.
Right. I didn't wake up one day and
yeah.
be able to do this. Sorry. I didn't mean
No, I wish I could tell people that, it'll work that way.
Yeah.
But even listening takes practice.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to find, and gosh, even me, babe, just last night, like doing something on my phone after I asked you a question, you were responding.
Yeah.
We need to be better listeners.
What happened though?
You told me how that made you feel, and I validated you, and I was like, I could totally see how that would be annoying. I'm sorry. And I told you I would do better.
And we moved on.
Yeah.
It's just as easy as that. And let's just be fair though. You are an excellent listener, and that is not something that happens all the time. And when I addressed it, I just said, sometimes when you ask me a question, I'm answering the question, or when I'm talking and you're looking at your phone, it makes me think that you're not paying attention, something to that effect. And you responded right away. And I didn't say it angry. I didn't yell or anything. And so I'm just saying, again, it's not to pat myself on the back because the way I reacted or even the way Jen reacted. It's just saying that it can be done. You can
Yeah,
be
and it does take
respectful.
practice.
It does take practice, but you can start today. If you're not already doing this, any person listening can start today. You can be respectful through willingness to listen rather than react instinctively. And how much better do we feel when we do not knee-jerk react to something that someone says?
Yeah, there's nothing to
It,
apologize for, feel bad
right.
about.
It gives us the power and not the other person. And it's not just about power, but that's what it does, to not knee-jerk react to something. Some people are toxic and they want to get a rise out of you.
Mhm.
It's one of the biggest things you can do to thwart their desire to have you react by not reacting. It makes people really
Yep.
angry.
Sometimes they'll go at you harder.
Yeah, well, like when someone's road raging against you and they're flipping you off and stuff, and you just raise your hand and nod and smile and look forward again. It seems like they get angrier about that than they would if you jumped into the sandbox with them. It
Yeah.
just, they don't expect that. They don't expect you just to smile and nod, Anyway. Thank you, Jen. Do you have anything else you want to add?
Nope, that's it.
All right, Glenn, the last question, the last response. Be respectful through a willingness to listen rather than react instinctively. What do you say?
I say I agree with everything that's been said prior, and I will add one thing. If you react, you cut off your opportunity to respond constructively.
Wow. That's true. I think that's true.
And I also have a question from Naughty McKee from back further, which I promised we'd bring up, but I'll introduce it after you read the next paragraph.
Sure. Okay. The thought is to find equilibrium with any person. We must accept them for who they are, an imperfect being. Very important. That means in a relationship of substance, it is healthy that there are differences. Anything said is not to be taken personally and is not a put down. It is an expression of love that someone can feel at ease to say what they truly think and feel. There it is. You want me to finish the rest before you comment on Nikki's?
I'll add to. I think we may have sort of addressed the question, but as I promised, I'll read it.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. I've got to find it. So, what would be the best way to administer constructive criticism?
Read it one more time, please.
So, what would be the best way to administer constructive criticism?
I think
constructively.
Yeah. I think to make it a critique instead of a criticism. And Jen said earlier the cookie. I don't even know if anyone knows of the cookie, but if you're going to say something that's difficult to a person, this is again something my mom told me, and it's something they used in tutoring children. Shannon uses it too. My sister is a tutor, very good tutor. And when she's trying to teach a student how to pick up on something new or working with homework and correcting incorrect answers, she will start by saying what the person did right in the homework. Well, look at 1 through 10. You did very good. You look at this question that you answered. That's excellent. You thought about the answer. You've shown your work. If it's math or whatever, you get the idea. And then say something that might be harder on 11 through 15, we can do a little bit better than this. You didn't add this here, you didn't carry the one, whatever. And then ended up with something positive again, like something encouraging, like you can do this. You've shown by the way you answered 1 through 10 that you are grasping the material. Some of these answers, they gave you a little trouble, but we're going to work on it. And by the end of this session, you're going to have a better handle on things before the test. Forgive the example, but it seems to fit. So we can pick up on these tools. We can, instead of it being criticism. And also, what, as Nez said, we've all had very good answers tonight, in my opinion. It depends on what our intention is. Like in the example I use, obviously she's a tutor and that's what she's being paid to do. But in regular life, if our intention is to help the other person, if we see that they're struggling in some way and our intention is to help them, we can say it in a way that sounds helpful, rather than just, oh, well, you need to quit doing this. Also, our tone. Jen mentioned that earlier. The tone in which we say things to people matters. It matters. So if we don't have to think of it as criticism, it can be a critique. And I am making the distinction between the two because I feel like they're different. I mentioned the workshops that we used to do with writing. It was a critique, not a criticism. What makes it a critique is that the reason for saying anything to a person at all is because they're there to be a better writer. Well, it's true with anything else. If they're asking your opinion, we can present our opinion. It doesn't have to be a criticism. It can be a critique, and we can do it with good intentions, and we can make sure to say something positive first. Say the thing that it might be harder for them to hear, and then back it up with something positive. Use the cookie method. Again, it's one of these things that seems so simplistic, but I use it all the time, and it really helps, especially with kids when you're talking to kids, rather than just coming out with something negative right off the bat. You say something positive first. You say the thing that's hard, and then you say something. You back it up with something positive. Jen, what do you have to say to Nikki's question?
My brain is falling asleep. I'm going to pass just because I can't wrap my mind around it at the moment.
Nez, do you have an answer?
Please repeat it for me, please.
Yeah, please repeat it, Glenn. You're muted, Glenn, in case you
got me, Crips.
Oh, sorry.
I was muted.
Okay.
Some people prefer me to be like that.
Just when the phone rings. Just when the phone rings.
No, that's all good. So what would be the best way to administer constructive criticism? I've got an answer if you want me first. Go, Ness, sorry.
Out of a place of genuine concern
Yeah.
for the person you're offering it to, if you are interested in helping them and not tearing them down, and also timing, tone, and necessity of the thing being said, if those are all in order and coming from a positive place where you genuinely want to construct and not destruct.
Right.
Beautiful.
Okay, what's your answer, Glenn? Thank you. Thank you, Ness.
Sure. Put yourself in a place that how would you respond if you were administering this constructive criticism to yourself?
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Yeah. It's amazing how when it's put in your face, you can sometimes get a wake-up call.
Well, that's true, and I think is very helpful. So each of us kind of had a helpful tip, the tool, so to speak. That fits into empathy for me. You're empathizing. You're thinking ahead of time. How would I react if a person was presenting this information to me? And that can be very helpful in helping a person to not criticize someone else. Very good answers. I'll read the end, and then we'll say our good nights. Glenn says, finally, in my opinion, the, quote, life of me, end quote, begins and ends with the self. The motto here is only we can only change ourselves. So forget about trying to change others. That's definitely words to live by. And then the quote, face your path with courage. Don't be scared of people's criticism. And above all, don't let yourself get paralyzed by your own criticism. Wow. How often have we talked about that? The internal voice that we have that continually criticizes ourselves. When you deal with that and get rid of that, there's so much more positive energy that you can live in. Yeah, you don't have to be critical of yourself, but I think that's the hardest to do, in my opinion. And that quote was by our friend Pueblo Coelho. All right, that's it for tonight, guys. So this is an ongoing series. Glenn had said in the chat he's planning on doing. He's got 8 shows in his head, so we're going to do 4, and then he'll take a break. We'll see how everyone responds to tonight's broadcast, of course. So please leave a note for us in the comment section if you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. Hopefully you got something out of it. I know I did. Or pop it in the chat if you looking forward to part 2. This was very good, Glenn. Thank you for taking the time to put this together. Thank you to the universe for giving you the information that you needed out of the ether. I think it's a wonderful and beautiful thing to Jen and I are talking about this with creativity, not trying to force things and not waiting for something to happen, but we have it inside us. I believe we all have creativity. We have the answers that we need. They're all inside us. Sometimes we just need music. Music is a huge thing. And Jen has an announcement. We're just putting things together, but within the weeks to come, she has some things that she's working on, and I'm very excited. I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag just yet, but just look forward to some new things coming. Thank you all for being a part of tonight's broadcast. We hope that you all enjoyed it. More than that, hope you got something out of it. Hope everyone has a good week. Join us next week at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for another episode of True Story Live for part 2 in this ongoing series. For the Life of Me was the I guess that's the series name. Sorry, For the Life of Me. So this was part 1. Within Our Nature was tonight's critique versus criticism. All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you for being with us tonight. We appreciate you. Jen, take a minute to say goodbye to the peoples, please.
Absolutely. This was a great discussion. I really appreciate the write-up, Glenn. It was very good and wonderful questions. Sorry, my brain's fallen asleep. You guys have a great week. And if you have any prayer requests, please pop them in the chat. We'd love to lift you up in prayer. And we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.
All right. Glenn, take a moment to say goodbye to the peoples, please.
That leaves me. Well, I'll say good night from beautiful Candace and with the sunny skies and the clear air.
There you go.
Look forward to being here next week. If the universe wills, I'd be here.
There you go. Thank you, Glenn. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. All right. Nez, could you please make any comments you'd like to about tonight's broadcast or anything else you'd like to share, and then close us down, please?
Thank you so much. What a great discussion, great write-up, Glenn. And I just loved everything that we had to say. It was just a good flow from the chat as well with their contributions. Thanks, everybody, for a great all-around discussion tonight. Please do take a moment to share the stream out on your social media if you're so inclined. And, tell somebody to come on by and join us for the next conversation. We'd love to see more people come on in here. And if Jen was correct, there are those of us here that enjoy praying for other people. Please give us your prayer request if you feel like you want to do that. And I'm looking forward to next week when we... is the series going to be continuing, Glenn, next Sunday?
Yes, I think he intends on doing 4. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, then we will be diving back into more of this next Sunday. Looking forward to that. Thanks, everybody, and I hope you have a blessed week. Stay safe out there, and good night, everyone. We'll see you next Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here on True Story Live.